Welcome to another episode of BizTech Twist. I am Bob Coppage, crotchety geeks, CEO Simplex-IT, all that good fun stuff. And we're going to be talking about your traditional podcast, business, technology, topics, concepts, ideas, but from a different perspective. And for this episode, for a different perspective, I can think of nothing more different than Ken Patterson, who is the VP of Community and Ecosystems over at Taylor Business Group. And I'm the crotchety old geek, but you can be both dynamically positive and crotchety simultaneously, which is kind of tough.
Right, without even trying.
I know. But the thing is, you and I have known each other through different iterations of both of our careers, all that kind of good stuff. And one of the things you and I have had several really good conversations on has been the different approach between that entire supply and demand, the vendor clients, all of that kind of fun stuff, not only in terms of how we should approach it from a day-to-day standpoint, but also how it's changing, both from a technology thing as well as from, let's say it, post-pandemic and the like.
Right.
And I think it's first of all, I want to ask, what is ecosystem? When you talk about, especially in your title, how do you define ecosystem from that perspective?
Well, it's still being defined, Bob, as I see it. The reason why I started the idea of ecosystem was, listening to folks like Jay McBain, right, who really expand on, it's not just about the community, it's about the ecosystems. It's beyond the community itself. It's everything they serve. And then also the connection between separation of just being MSP based, right? We talk about our MSP community, but as we discussed, there's so many other ecosystems that multiple communities that connect to each other. So it would take a much longer show to explain actual ecosystem and what it's evolving into, because the word's been around for a little bit when you're talking about it's almost like talking about planets and then galaxies, and then you just keep on stretching it out. It's similar to how the businesses all connect here. I think tech is touching more ecosystems than we think about. So I think the expansion of just saying, hey, we're handling this subset of MSPs is going to stretch beyond that, because there's also, for instance, printing, print companies. There's also, it's now diving out into everything, right? We have that whole conversation about when people talk about tech, the tech industry, and they include stuff like Tesla. Well, is Tesla a tech company, or is it a car company that uses tech? I think that stretch is starting to happen. Well,
not to mention that when we talk about tech industry now, there's also the information industry.
Right.
And the information industry is taking its lead from the tech industry, but making leaps and bounds in terms of what it can do with information. And so that's turning all over the place. And, we talk about the MSP, managed service provider. That's basically the organization providing support to small, medium businesses. But it's true. You can basically make that claim of ecosystem being true for any industry.
Right.
And it's going to be different, not only different from one industry to the next, but different from one company to another. You could have two companies who are in the exact same world, exact same space, but their definition of ecosystem is completely different.
Right. And that's where the confusion sets in. And the beauty of all this is what we talk about, the marketplace, right? How the marketplace is shifting. But I don't think that the vendors, as we discussed, the vendors are changing, or the MSPs are starting to learn it. But from a vendor perspective, their thought process behind selling in general, it's very archaic when you think about where everything else is going, the marketplace taking the next steps, the type of information that these end users have at their fingertips, where before it was, we're trying to sell them because we have to tell them these are the things you need and this is why you need it. But they got a lot of that. They have that information coming in their fingertips. So the marketplace is going to make a big shift. It's already starting to make a shift. Companies like Pax8 are changing the marketplace and how much further that reach can, go, and how they can help everybody in their ecosystem by having an open marketplace and pulling it all together in one spot. And I think that the vendors that are all part of this are not changing with the times, and we talked about it, like you said, I spent a lot of time over the last few months talking to vendors about where I would go and why community and ecosystems is important, And it all ended with the same thing. Well, how do we tie that to sales? What's the number? And I'm like, you're not getting it. You're not listening to what I'm saying. And that's the biggest piece of it is all shifting. And hopefully the vendors will start to pick up on this and get this and move forward, because it's not about the sale anymore. It's about the education, and it's about the community piece of this. Community drives what you call sales. I don't even like using the word sales that much anymore when I talk about this stuff, because sale implies you have to sell them something. It doesn't mean that it's any good. You have to sell them on, hey, this car that has, the tires are going to fall off a week after you buy it, but we're going to sell it to them anyways, type of mentality, right?
Right.
Whereas if you're just educating them and they're smarter and they understand all the pieces of it better, and then they choose you, they're going to be a little bit more, they're going to become part of your community. They're going to become part of something that's bigger. And that's something that I think has to change and has to grow into what we're talking about, being able to educate, not sell.
So, because a lot of people will talk about sales simply from it is a transaction. There's a sales transaction, but then you've got that next step. No, it's not transaction based. It's relationship based. And relationship is one of those where I'll let you know what that means later.
Yeah.
There's no real good definition. And yet, if we talk about it from a standpoint of an ecosystem, if we talk about it more from the standpoint, now we're talking about we've got to keep it going from the long-term goals and objectives, not just the immediate goal or objective that an organization has. And how do we make sure that we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater? You know what I'm saying? As far as if an organization is trying to make that transition, and to me, part of that gets to value. Mm-hmm. And I get back to, because I'm old, I don't know that. And back in the day, if I wanted to buy a stereo, I had to go to a stereo store.
Right.
And I talked to people who just sold stereos, and I bought a stereo. Okay. Now, or then it became, there's a big box store that just deals with electronics. Okay, I'll go there. I'll buy a stereo. Then it became just a big box store. Okay, I'll go there and buy a stereo. Now it's I'll go to Amazon or I'll go to wherever.
Right.
And essentially, but I can still buy that same quality of product, but I no longer need all those middlemen and women to sell it to me. And I think technology is going through some of the same things as far as IT goes.
Yeah, that's 100% accurate. Not bad for an old guy. That's pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
you can stay on my lawn.
Exactly. Now. Here we go. I get to stay on the lawn just for a few more minutes.
Just for a few minutes.
I mean, listen, that's exactly right. Right. And the reason for that is you've kind of been, we've all been, taught now and educated on how to get that information without needing someone to sell it to us. We have the information's at our fingertips. Once we have all that information, we can go pick and choose that and decide which one we want, because we can access this information anywhere. And now we have access to it. We pick the one that we want, we buy it, and you're right. It's a whole different process. And so, there's our business, our industry is just a little bit tougher than that, but it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It's leaning into that. And by the way, if we're all out there building community on education and we're just educating people, much like you do, and I've seen you do at your commit and all the things that you do, what happens is over time, there's trust built without even having to, tell them why. Hey, Bob, this is why you should like me. I do this, I do that, I do that.
Right.
Well, okay, it sounds like you like a lot about you and you like to talk about you, and that just doesn't build trust. But if we're talking about, hey, here's some things I struggle with, or here's some things I struggled with over time, here's some ways to help you with your business going down the line. And then, oh, by the way, if you ever need help with that, yes, we can take care of that type of mentality, right? Where you're just going out and actually you have to be genuine about it too. Genuinely, Trey, I know you don't like that word, but
I can fake sincerity. I really can.
Yes, you can. You're very authentic when you want to be.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that, I know that these things all tie into it because you talk about relationships, right? And when you're growing businesses, it's all about fostering that trust and relationships, right? You're not pushing a product. The goal is to show value, as you said, and of the product, but build relationships and not even talk about products anymore. That's another thing I hate. Forget about product. Let's talk about solutions, right? Solutions are what rule the world. It's all about business decisions. And we know as techies back in the day, it was all about tech.
Right.
And, Paul Redding, I think, had the best line I've heard, and I still love to use it. It's like when you're talking to an end user who doesn't get technology, all they hear is Charlie Brown's teacher. Want, money, want, right?
Yeah.
But if you're saying, hey, what keeps you up at night? And they talk about it and you say, okay, well, you don't care about all the stuff, how I do it, but here's a solution to that problem. And it just shifts everything around because you're talking about their actual needs as opposed to trying to tell them all the great things that your technology does.
And one of the things we also do is we tend to, from a technology standpoint, we also tend to over talk about the technology.
Well, you're bringing that to the 555. Remember that one?
Are you fed up with reactive IT providers who take too long to respond, let problems fester, and nickel and dime you for every little thing? Say goodbye to those frustrations by choosing Simplex-IT, home of Amazon's best-selling author and BizTech Twist host Bob Coppedge. As Northeast Ohio's friendly neighborhood MSP, Simplex-IT has been providing top-notch managed and co-managed IT services since 2007, supporting hundreds of clients locally and across the United States. With a managed service provider like Simplex-IT, you'll benefit from proactive maintenance, 24/7 monitoring, and streamlined technology that will help you grow your business. Visit simplex-it.com for more information and to start experiencing stress-free IT today.
The 555, you spend 5 minutes selling them on the product and you got them, and then you spend the next 55 talking them out of it. I mean, that's the whole, right? You got to listen. You got to understand what it is, get to it, and move on. And what happens is you fall into that mode, that mode where you feel like, oh, I got to sell, and your brain switches, and that's all you're doing is selling and talking.
And to me, at the end of the day, that's also what the client is trying to do. Now, while they're talking to me, they're trying to sell and provide their goods and services to their clients.
Yes.
And how can we, and this gets back to both the empathy as well as the educational side. Let's say we're talking to a widget manufacturer. How can we help them sell better widgets, sell more widgets, do all those kind of fun stuff? Because from a training standpoint, to train them on the tools that they can use to do that, and the empathy, we know what it's like to go through that process. Then we can bring in technology to be a seasoning for that conversation, not the topic of that conversation.
Exactly. It's amazing what that does too. It changes everything when you don't do that. And it's just, like we talk about, right? There's 4 pieces that I see that are involved with this. You're talking about relationships, authenticity, collaboration, and information. And on every single aspect of that, if you're, first of all, when you're trying to sell, you don't sound very authentic.
Right.
Even if you truly believe in everything that you're trying to do, if you're putting on the sales speech and spiel and you have to push hard, they're not getting it. It's because you weren't being authentic in the first place.
Right.
And you can only do that by building a relationship with them and having the conversation with them around their needs, not yours, not what you do, all the crazy things that happen, right? It has to be that way. And then, of course, from a collaboration standpoint, it's definitely more exciting to collaborate to understand the customer's needs versus making a disjointed pitch when there's a bad fit. I mean, you can't leave it. If you're leaving and you're the only one energized, there's probably a problem. You have to walk out. It has to be both of you feeling energized when you're leaving that meeting.
Well, that gets back to a value conversation I like to have with both potential and if they actually do sign on clients is at the end of the day, we both have to be able to look across the table and say, I have value because of this relationship. If only one party's able to do that, it is not going to last for whatever reason. And you could have both parties being absolutely honest, open, objective. They're being, everybody's being positive. But at the end of the day, both parties have to win. For it, and especially when we're in such a solution-rich environmental world, we got lots of choices to where to go with our business and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, I agree, and unfortunately it's not happening at a fast enough pace. I think that the change is happening, like we said, it's in the marketplace itself. It's starting to shift, but I don't think the vendors themselves are seeing it and buying into it now. you see Pax8 pick up a guy like Rob Ray, and he comes in communities and ecosystems, right? That could hopefully be a shift. Okay, there's Ken Patterson over here, and then there's this big Rob Ray thing happening. Maybe we need to start looking at that, and maybe like doing things like this, more talking about it and getting it out there and having a better understanding of it. But I think they're all stuck in this older approach, and they're afraid to break free of that and change that.
First of all, it's a cost.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And you have so many, just like X number of years ago, everybody said, "Oh, I just want to sell. I don't want to market." Why can't I just focus on selling stuff? Why do you have to go through that process? And I think to a certain degree, we're saying the same thing here, that if we're going to start building that empathy, that collaboration, that trust, that all that is going to have to go through a process that will ultimately lead to the relationships and the financial, transactions that we're looking for. But it's not going to be right out of the gate.
It's almost I'm sorry there, Bob.
No, go ahead. First of all, you're not. You're a lousy.
I'm not really sorry. You're right.
No. But,
it's funny when you said that something clicked in my brain. It's almost like going from servers to cloud. They want to hold on to those servers, right?
Oh, yeah.
And here, the difference is they want to hold on to the number. Oh, wait, it's going to tie to this number. We got to hold on to this number.
Yeah.
Have to have a number. And they can't see that look past that and see, well, if you just go this way and do it through education and build this community of stark raving fans, and they believe in you and they understand what it is you're doing and they get it, how much more can come in? But they can't tie a number to that, right? They know they got to hire someone like me or someone that's going to handle the community, but they're not going to be tied to an actual sales number. What do we do? Right? It's hard to break that.
But then you get into that whole, all right, what's the KPI that I'm going to use?
Right.
Okay. What's a KPI for engagement? What's a KPI for a community? Events, seats.
It's funny you mentioned that, because let me just look here real quick while we're chatting. I think I actually have something I started when I was looking at some of this stuff real quick. And it's, obviously it's going to be rough, but and it's always tough when you're talking about KPIs for something like that too.
Oh, absolutely.
I agree. I started to see, okay, I see why they're upset or they're nervous about this. But at the same time, for me, it was like, but didn't you see what I did over at Pax8? Like, they put me in a position. They never had it before. They let me run, and the events were always full. People were learning. The people that were learning were actually coming back and buying more because they understood what they were buying and they knew exactly where they should apply it.
But would you get pushback on that from either A, yeah, but our company's different, or B, yeah, but our company's smaller?
Yeah, no, you will, obviously, but I don't think it's correct. I think smaller, you can still do that. Actually, you're better off when you're smaller because you haven't thought about the full sale tie-in yet. You haven't done any of that yet, right? When you're smaller, you're just building out these roles. So you can start to build these roles out. And look, there is an MSP out there that has a community person running there, and all they do is tie into the local chamber, tie into the local Rotary. They do all, and they tie into the local charity. I would be willing to bet that a big part of their growth that's happening for them is around the fact that this person tied into all these community things and did all these pieces. And that's all they do. They don't have a sales number. And the only reason I know this is we took the bus down there and he was the person in charge. They actually brought a woman out that does some charity locally for them and just asked if she could come out to the thing. And it was great. The tie-in, but the people that came out were definitely bought into their system because they were really there for their local community. And then this person was going to tie into the whole community that they serve, right? From a standpoint of the actual their partners. So someone already doing this from an MSP perspective, I thought, wow, that's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, that is.
Some of the things like you talked about, right? Some of the KPIs that I started to jot down, you're talking about from an engagement, track the number of active users in the community. So you can watch the growth as you bring someone on that's adding to that resolution rate, because a lot of what I did from a community standpoint, when people it brought issues up, especially from a social perspective, I would jump in and make, so you have that resolution rate. If that started, obviously time to resolution, just like a ticket, same idea.
Yep.
User satisfaction usually jumps up because people are being taken care of quicker because they have someone that they're tied into that does that type of thing. And then there were employee engagement, where the employees engaging a little bit more because the community was being tied closer together. I found a lot of that happening internally. I did a lot to tie in what we were doing externally to the customers and the partners to the actual internal team, and showing the internal team the same things I was talking about with the MSPs. I would say to them, and I would always say, okay, the VP of sales is probably going to be angry when I say this, but stop selling. Stop selling. Build the relationship. Find out what the MSPs need, what they want. Ask them a question right out of the gate. If there was one thing I could do better that would make your life better, what would it be? I think the MSP might fall off their chair when they hear that question.
Right.
But, get the answer to that question and then save it and use it, and so that you have a better relationship with these partners we're calling them partners for a reason. So there's measurement for that. Also, just one quick one from an event standpoint. What I was trying to add on was, we do an event for all our partners, right? The partners come out, they do their thing. Everybody that come out to the event, you measure it 30, 60, 90, 120 days out. Are they doing more in a specific area because of that? Because you help them. Because we would go to these events and half the time they'd say, oh, I didn't know you did that. So you're not always reaching the people the way that you think you are. So doing things like that, and it's all done through community. There was no sales pitch. That's where you see that change start to happen.
Well, and you bring up another part that I was forgetting, and that was the individual relationship aspect of it. When you think about it, because my brain was automatically stuck on the show, on the presentation, on the whatever, but simply having a person who is essentially a concierge, for lack of a better word, who essentially, when someone says, I'm having a bad experience, and they're saying it in a public area where 50 people say, wow, that person's having a bad experience, I think less of that vendor. But immediately someone says, hey, what can I do? How can I help? Which is,
have you ever seen my response? My response is almost the same.
Yeah, I don't care. Go away. Don't ever bother me again.
Shoo.
At least whenever I say anything.
Yeah. The first response always was, though, hey, we're not perfect. Nobody is.
Absolutely.
But I do feel like we fix problems faster than most. So tell me what your problem is. So that way, right away, it's kind of diffusing the whole, anger.
Absolutely.
Right? Don't have to be angry. And then they have to come back and say, okay, well, here's my problem. And then they go back and usually say, hey, Ken, help me out here. When they see that out there, instead of just that negative, like you said, because I always say negative stuff on social is like a tube of toothpaste. Squirt that thing out on your dining room table and then try to get it back in the tube. It's not happening, right? Once it's out there, it stays there. It lives there. No matter what, you can delete it. It's in everybody's head already. So you have to make sure what you're putting out there, if someone's going to fix it or go down the road of community and make them feel better about it, you have to have that on the other side.
And the nice thing is, of course, is you start with the nobody's perfect. So it is it's not our fault. It's not we're working on it. Why are you bothered? It's not anything except for there's an admission of the possibility. Yeah, we may have mucked up, but let's work on making it better.
Exactly.
And similarly, when you ask the question of what could we do better, it also, if you find a similar answer from multiple clients, because you're asking them not at a moment of need, not in a moment of panic, of emergency, you're just asking them at a time where they can answer honestly. You get several answers that are similar or in the similar area. Now you can go back to the organization and say, here's an opportunity for us to improve.
Well, that's the key part, Bob. You have to actually do that.
Oh, what? You do?
You actually have to do that, right? You have to, we people are telling us stuff. We have to act.
This is hard.
That's hard. Yeah.
But it's interesting because there's a marketing concept out there, which we're big believers in. Taya, they ask you answer, where you are looking for whatever questions, and you go throughout your organization and you say, anybody asks the same question, let us know what it is, because there's probably other people. So let's start putting together answers. We do a lot of videos on that. But I hadn't really thought of it from this perspective of when you're asking it from the aspect of your ecosystem concept. Is that way you're actually going out, you're looking for those questions, you're looking for those improvement points, you're looking for ways to things that you can better educate on. Because if you answer that question or you come up with that solution for that one person, there's 20 others in the wings who never thought to ask it or never thought you cared, that you can preemptively answer their questions, which again, from that positioning of the organization as someone who cares and someone who's looking for that long-term relationship. Wow, how did you know that was important to me?
And these are the things that they can't measure, right? When they talk about the measurement, how are you measuring? What are you measuring? Well, there's these intangibles, this relationship stuff that comes out of doing that. I mean, I still get people sending me notes about, hey, you help me out with this problem. I having an issue, whatever it may be. And it's just funny because now they're not just going to social and spewing it to social. They've learned that, hey, I can just send a note to somebody who cares at that establishment, and they're going to get it done, because they knew on the back end, I was on fire. If I had something that I needed done, I would go, and I had influence. That's something else that when I was going to the vendors, I'm like, look, I don't want control. That's a wrong word. I need influence. I need to be able to say to any VP in the company, this is going on in your department. We need to fix it. And by the way, I'm going to stay on you until it's done. Yeah. And that changes everything when you call a partner back and go, hey, by the way, it's not going to get done today, but I'm on this and I'm going to stay on it until it does. They're like, whoa, okay. I mean, it's not silence until it gets fixed. It's that over communication saying, hey, we're on this. We're going to stay on this. And by the way, if it's us, we're going to let you know it was us. If it's you, I'm definitely going to let you know it was you, and we're going to fix it.
But in a positive way.
Right. Exactly.
Because we don't want you to make the same mistake, assuming it was a mistake. We don't want you to make the same mistake twice. So it's a learning opportunity, But the other thing is parallel that to a traditional sales organization. Mm-hmm. So a client calls a salesperson who's got their quota, who's trying to make their bonus. They're trying to do all this. And the client who called them doesn't want to buy something. They want to complain. They're not necessarily, that salesperson is not in a position, nor are they incentivized necessarily to take that as seriously as someone in your position. Right.
100%. But you can teach everybody in the organization to get to that point. That's what I was doing internally. It's also, that's another part of this community role, is whoever it is should have the ability to still educate internally and let people understand that they have to have that part to their, because these people are still turning into, customer success.
Right.
And I think that over time, people are going to shoot me for this remark, but I still think over time that the sales thing goes away completely, and you just heavily compensate people to be customer success people. Forget about the quota, forget about chasing those numbers, and allow them to be paid well to do a job they love, because now they realize they're genuinely helping people. It changes the way changes their thought process. They don't, it's, hey, by the way, Bob, it's the end of the month and I got to make a quota. So could you buy 30 seats of Sentinel once? Like, what?
Yeah. But that has to start with the organization.
Right. 100%.
The organization has to basically say, we need to make this transition. And it's interesting because if you look at it, and I love the whole blue ocean, red ocean concept. Blue ocean, you don't have competition. It's smooth fishing and all that. Red ocean, Shark City, you're a commodity. Right. I love that. But sometimes you could almost make the case that a blue ocean is because there are no fish there. There is no eating. There is no meal. And if you are a commodity type of sales structure organization, a lot of cases, organizations, they'll double down. They'll just do what they were doing, and they'll do it harder. They'll do it faster. They'll cut their profit margins to razor thin. And it's interesting because you have to look for those signs from above that are saying, no, you have to change. You have to adapt. So if you're in an organization and you recognize that this is going on, and it's not such a large organization, don't have anybody's ear, but how would you approach management to talk about this type of change?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'm still trying to figure it out myself. I just went through this, walking through these places. And listen, a lot of good companies, a lot of smart people. It's tough. It's really tough. And like I said, even having the experience that I had at Pac State, where I came in and did it, and people saw it, they still were like, yeah, but how does it work? Well, I just did it, right? So, I mean, the one thing to remember if you're going to have this conversation, one, if the folks that you're talking, you have to, something I always do now, and I don't know where I learned it, but I always go worst case. So I know what I'm up against. What's the worst thing that's going to happen here? These people are not going to ever listen. They're hard-headed. They're never going to get there. So I know exactly the worst case is I might not be here after I make the statement to management, right? So be prepared for that if you're going to make the statement. But it's always working from a place that people don't argue with their own data, I guess is the way I think of it. So I would ask the questions of them. What's more important to them? Is it really important? Is our customer experience more important? Is it, what's more important? Is it just making money? And then try to work my way into those angles, because you can still make a lot of money. I feel like you can make more money doing it this way and feel a little bit better about it, sleep a little bit better at night about it, because you're not necessarily pushing something on people and feeling like you have to put that pressure on them. And by the way, that's why we're in this mess in the first place, is because back in the day, we went around pushing this stuff like used car salesmen. Right. And now that, from an MSP perspective, that's why all the customers think, oh, this guy's just trying to sell me technology, instead of thinking of us like the doctor, right? And being more prescriptive. The vendors have to do this same thing. So yeah, if I'm in a smaller organization, I'm going to bring this up. First thing I do is think of worst case, so I'm prepared for it, if I can bring that up to them. And then also you have to make the decision, if the people you're talking to are just so hard-headed and can't get past it, then you decide whether or not it's worth staying in the first place. Right. But if they're open to the idea, you don't have to change everything overnight, but just start by bringing somebody that is community. And I don't mean saying, hey, Bob, you're now our community guy. You're also sales, you're also marketing, and we're adding community to your title. That's not how it works. Starting off with smaller things like doing some community events and having somebody that actually does that play off the what's going on, what's wrong, what are we doing right, bring the stuff back, actually affect change when you're coming back. Like, that's the other problem, is you get all this feedback and you don't do anything with it. Well, people are going to notice, and it's not going to get things to the
right.
next
Right.
Right.
You can't do the lip service.
The whole process has to work from beginning to end. It has to be, we're going to get out there, we're going to be in the community, and we're going to listen. We're actually going to listen. That's the easiest part of it all, Bob, is the listening partly. And that's what I don't get. Sometimes I get frustrated because this isn't that difficult. Listening to what people want and exacting some change and setting expectations properly. It's very simple. We're not going to go out there and change the world overnight because you told us that this is all broken, but we do have a roadmap, and we're working on things, and we're going to change things step by step, and know that we value what you say.
So I'll push back a little bit just because it's fun. I don't think it's that easy. From the standpoint of, it goes against organizational behavior. And in a lot of cases, the way we've been trained since day one about how, when we see the salesman, it's Glenn Ross.
Right. Oh yeah.
It's that whole process. It's that, we have to go out and we have to kill. What do we want for a salesperson? Well, we want that hunter. Right. Well, because the gatherer thing.
Mentality. Yeah.
Exactly. And to change that. And again, you're changing it while it's happening. And especially if you're not management, I think, and again, I think the steps that you're outlining are absolutely spot on, but I don't think it's easy. But I'll also double down on what you also said, that where do you want to work?
Right.
Is if you want to work in a place, especially if your gut from a sales standpoint, if that's not you. Right. But you're being asked to be that person. One of two things is going to happen. Either number one, you're going to continue to fake that day in, month in, year out. And that's going to, technical terms, suck. Or number two, you're going to turn into that person.
Right. Exactly. And maybe you're not happy with that either, right?
Yeah.
What's interesting about what you said, what I mean by it's easy is I just feel like it's easier to be genuine and authentic than it is not to be. And that's just, obviously being who I am, I'm a bit, I'm blunt, I'm to the point. I don't play that, but I do believe that most people, and I've talked to a lot of salespeople, and when I'm having these conversations with the sales teams and they're struggling with this stuff, and I just take that burden off their shoulders. Hey, stop selling. Here's what you got to do. Be genuine. Talk to them about their life. Get involved in what they need, what they're dealing with, their problems. It's not as difficult. Now, I will say some of the best old school salespeople could be really good at this because, yes, there are people out there that need to, I don't want to say be tricked, but need to get out of their own way. They need help getting out of their own way, right? So there are tactics that are old sales tactics. My best closing line ever, Bob, at the end of a call when they've given me every rebuttal in the book about why, everything's great. I would say, Bob, this is great. I'm glad that you're taken care of. This is all I really care about. I want to make sure that every business has the security and the solutions that will protect them. That's really what I care about. So now that the call's over, can you just answer just one marketing question for me? And you say, sure, right? And then I'm like, if your team could do anything better, just one thing better, what would it be? And 98% of the time it would be, well, Bill shows up late all the time. And then of course I roll right into, I'm putting them right in my psychological chair and saying, how does that make you feel? And then you you peel back the onion.
Right.
So there are sales things that work when I think it's easier when you're using these tools to better help them. It's what's best for them. You need to get past the wall. You need to get past that stuff, right? So you can still use that stuff because you're not trying to sell them something that you don't care about. You just, I need to push these for my benefit. It's, oh my God, Bob can't get out of his own way. He's got these problems. And if he just would stop and listen and understand, and then you can use some of those old school sales tactics will work. And I think that they're better when you're using them in a genuine way.
So in other words, you want to take the supervillain and turn them into a superhero, but keep their powers.
You can do that.
Okay, good. Weird, but good. All right. Any last parting thoughts, words, anything along those lines?
I want us all to make it better, make it all, make this community and the ecosystems that we serve and we spread out to, and as this all changes, to get better. What I speak about comes from the heart. I really do care about, all of what we all do. And I believe in the whole rising tides raise all ships. And Bob, what you're doing here is a great thing. So I think let's just try to think about things differently and don't always assume that the old way is always going to work, and stick to the, tried and true on everything, not just the sales part of this stuff and, the marketing. I will say this, education is the key, and it's in all facets: marketing education, sales education, and of course, education throughout everything that you do. It's always going to make it better.
Cool. Words to end with. All right, my friend, thank you very much for attending. Again, this is Ken Patterson, who is the VP of Community and Ecosystems at Taylor Business Group. Thanks for joining me. And to all of you, please remember, subscribe, all that good fun stuff. And this is BizTech Twist. Thank you all. Catch you all later.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.